There comes a moment in every believer's life when God draws a line and says, enough. Enough of the sleepless nights. Enough of the silent tears. Enough of the waiting and wondering if things will ever change. You've walked through seasons where it felt like heaven was silent, but here this God has spoken. The pain ends here, and the promise begins now. You didn't go through that storm for nothing. Every night you cried, God was watching. Every battle you faced, He was working behind the scenes. It may have looked like loss, but God was using the breaking to prepare a bigger blessing. See, pain is never wasted in the hands of God. What hurt you is what's about to heal you. The same situation that caused your tears will one day cause your testimony. God doesn't let His children suffer without purpose. He refines through fire, strengthens through struggle, and promotes through pain. Maybe you've been saying, God, when will it end? And He's whispering back, right now. This is not just another ordinary season. This is your turning point. You've been faithful through the pain, and now you're stepping into the promise. Heaven has declared a new chapter over your life. That betrayal that broke you, God is using it to bless you. That loss that crushed your heart, God is using it to lift you higher. What looked like the end was actually a setup for something greater. You're coming out of this refined, not burned. Stronger, not bitter. Wiser, not wounded. The same fire that tried to consume you has purified your faith. You're walking out of the valley carrying victory in your spirit. Faith doesn't deny pain. It declares purpose. It looks at broken pieces and says, God can still build something beautiful. And that's what He's doing right now. He's building restoration from your ruins. You see, the waiting wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every no was positioning you for a greater wise. Every closed door was protection. Every delay was divine timing. God is saying, you've been tested, now it's time to be trusted. The pain had to end so the promise could begin. You can't live in both worlds. You can't cling to what hurt you and still reach for what heals you. God is cutting off what was to clear the way for what is. Don't look back with regret. Look forward with readiness. This is your now season. Doors that wouldn't open before are unlocking. Opportunities you thought were gone are reappearing. The same place you were broken in is the place you'll be blessed in. So lift your head, dry your tears. God hasn't forgotten you. The same God who saw you in pain is now sending you into promise. You survived what was meant to stop you. That means you're qualified for what's next. Declare it today. The pain ends here. The promise begins now. Because heaven has already decided. Your story is shifting from sorrow to strength, from weeping to winning, from waiting to walking in victory. The pain was part of your process, but the promise, that's your destiny. There comes a point in every life when God looks at the struggle and says, that's enough. You may not hear it in an audible voice, but you'll feel it in your spirit. Something will shift. The same storm that once raged so fiercely will start to quiet down. The same tears that once fell every night will dry up. The same weight that's been pressing on your shoulders will begin to lift. That's when you know your season of suffering has reached its expiration date. What you've been walking through wasn't meant to last forever. God never intended your pain to be permanent. Every season has a beginning and an end, and your ending is closer than you think. The Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. It doesn't say joy might come. It says it will. That means your morning is guaranteed. Your night of sorrow cannot last forever because God Himself has already appointed your sunrise. You see, God doesn't allow pain without purpose. Sometimes He lets us go through seasons that seem endless, the waiting, the heartbreak, the loss, the confusion, not because He wants to see us hurt, but because He wants to see us grow. Suffering stretches faith. It matures character. It deepens trust. It teaches us to depend on Him in ways we never did before. You may not realize it now, but the valley you've been walking through has been shaping you for the victory that's ahead. When you've cried until you can't cry anymore, when you've prayed and it still feels like nothing's changing, that's when God is doing His deepest work. He's strengthening your foundation, building endurance, and teaching you to stand on His promises even when you can't see the outcome. The enemy wants you to believe the pain will never end, but God is saying, hold on a little longer. You're closer to breakthrough than you've ever been. The truth is, there are expiration dates on every trial. that anxiety, that heartbreak, that financial struggle, that loneliness, they all have a limit. God has already marked the calendar for when it will end. Just because you can't see the date doesn't mean it's not set. He knows how long you need to stay in the fire, and He knows the exact moment to bring you out refined and ready. Think about Joseph. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison for something he didn't do. For years, it looked like his suffering would never end, but one morning, everything changed. He woke up a prisoner and went to bed a ruler. The pain had a purpose, and when the time was right, God turned it all around in an instant. That's how quickly God can move. One call, one moment, one divine decision, and your whole story can shift. Maybe you've been feeling like Joseph, forgotten, overlooked, stuck in a situation that seems unfair. You've been faithful, but nothing's changing. You've been sowing, but the harvest hasn't come. Friend, don't give up now. God hasn't forgotten about you. The same God who was with Joseph in the pit is with you in your pain. And just like He elevated Joseph, He's preparing to elevate you. Sometimes before God promotes you, He proves you. He tests your faith in the dark to see if you'll still trust Him when you can't trace Him. He allows people to walk away so you'll learn He's enough. He allows doors to close so you'll see that His plan is better. You may not understand it, but it's all preparation. You've been refined in the fire because the next season of your life requires purity, strength, and unwavering faith. The problem is many people give up right before the expiration date. They stop believing when they were only days away from breakthrough. They walk out of the process before the promise manifests. Don't do that. Hold your ground. Keep praising through the pain. Keep worshiping while you wait. Every moment of endurance is building a greater reward. There's a story in the Bible where God told the Israelites to march around the walls of Jericho for 7 days. The walls didn't move for 6 days straight. They could have stopped on day 6, thinking nothing was happening. But what they couldn't see was that God was weakening the walls from the inside. On the 7th day, the walls fell. Your situation might look the same on the outside, but God is working behind the scenes. Don't stop marching before your 7th day. God is faithful to finish what He starts. He never begins a story He doesn't plan to complete. You may not like how the story is unfolding, but the author hasn't stopped writing. You're just in the middle of the chapter. The ending will make sense later. Every heartbreak, every delay, every detour is leading you towards something better. You don't need to see the whole picture to trust that God is painting it beautifully. You've been in a season where nothing made sense, where the doors you prayed for didn't open, where the people you loved walked away, where it felt like everything you built fell apart. But hear this, that season is coming to an end. God is about to turn the page. The pain that once defined you will become the testimony that refines you. When a season expires, nothing can keep it alive. That means the depression that's been holding you down, the fear that's been paralyzing you, the shame that's been haunting you, all of it is losing its power right now. The same God who spoke the universe into existence is speaking over you today. The pain ends here. You may have walked through a long night, but the morning has been scheduled. Joy is on its way, so lift your head. Don't carry yesterday's sorrow into today's promise. The tears that watered your pillow are watering your harvest. The very things that tried to break, you have been building something inside you that can't be shaken. You're stronger than you think, closer than you realize, and more favored than you can imagine. God didn't bring you this far to leave you in pain. He brought you through to bring you to your promise, to your new beginning, to your restoration. You're stepping into a season where peace replaces pain, where laughter replaces tears, and where promise replaces pressure. Your season of suffering has expired. Heaven has declared it. The pain ends here, and your new chapter begins now. Every tear you've cried, every sleepless night, every moment you thought you wouldn't make it, none of it has been wasted. God saw it all. He felt every ache in your heart, every disappointment that crushed your spirit, every loss that left you broken. You may not understand it now, but one day you'll look back and see that the very pain that tried to destroy you was the tool God used to develop you. He never wastes pain. Sometimes we think pain is a sign that something's gone wrong, that God has forgotten about us or turned away. But in truth, pain often means that God is working more deeply than ever before. He doesn't use comfort to grow us, He uses challenges. He doesn't use ease to refine us, He uses endurance. Pain is not proof that God has abandoned you. It's proof that He's still shaping you. When you go through a season of hurt, it's natural to ask, why God, why me? Why now? But what if the better question is, what are you teaching me through this? Because every pain carries a purpose. The heartbreak wasn't random. The rejection wasn't meaningless. The waiting wasn't wasted. Behind every tear is divine intention. God takes the very thing that wounded you and turns it into the very thing that equips you. Think about how diamonds are made. They don't form in calm, comfortable environments. They're created under intense pressure and heat deep underground. It's the pressure that gives them value. The same is true for you. The pressure you've felt, the weight you've carried, the battles you've fought, they're producing something priceless inside you. You're becoming stronger, wiser, and more grounded in faith. Without the struggle, you wouldn't have the strength you have today. We serve a God who specializes in turning pain into purpose. Look through the pages of Scripture. Joseph's brothers betrayed him, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery. Years later, when Joseph stood in a palace, second in command over all Egypt, he looked at his brothers and said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." That's what happens when God gets involved. He turns pain into promotion. The same is true in your life. The people who hurt you, the doors that closed, the dreams that didn't come to pass, all of it is being used by God to direct you towards something better. The heartbreak wasn't meant to stop you, it was meant to shift you. The closed door wasn't rejection, it was redirection. If you could see what God is protecting you from, you'd be thanking Him for every no. Sometimes God allows us to walk through things we don't understand because He's preparing us for something we can't yet handle. The lessons you learned in the valley are the tools you'll need on the mountaintop. The humility you gained through hardship will sustain you when you step into success. The compassion you develop through your own pain will help you heal others when you tell your story. God doesn't waste any experience. He redeems it all. You may feel broken right now, but brokenness in the hands of God is not destruction. It's reconstruction. He takes shattered pieces and builds something new. The very cracks in your heart become channels where His light can shine through. The very scars you carry become signs of survival, proof that you made it through what was meant to break you. You may have walked through the fire, but look at you, you're still standing. That's not weakness, that's divine strength. Maybe you've been through betrayal, heartbreak, loss, or failure. You've asked yourself if it was all for nothing, but it wasn't. God saw the pain. He saw the moments when you kept believing even when everything around you said, give up. He saw the nights when you prayed through the tears and chose faith over fear. He saw your endurance, and He's about to reward it. Pain is never wasted when it's placed in His hands. Sometimes the pain is God's way of pruning. In John 15, Jesus says that the Father prunes every branch that bears fruit so it can bear more. That means God sometimes cuts back what's working, not because He's punishing you, but because He's preparing you for greater growth. It hurts when relationships end, when opportunities fall apart, when life doesn't go as planned. But what feels like loss is often the first step toward abundance. God cuts, but He never cuts to kill, He cuts to heal. There are things you've learned through pain that you never could have learned through comfort. You learned who truly cared. You learned how to pray when you didn't have the words. You learned how to trust when you couldn't see the outcome. You learned that God's strength is made perfect in your weakness. You learned that even when everything falls apart, His love never fails. These lessons are worth every tear because they've shaped you into who you are today. When you look back someday, you won't just see pain, you'll see purpose woven through it all. You'll realize that God was present in every detail, guiding every step, working every setback into a setup. That disappointment led you to your destiny. That closed door led you to your calling. That heartbreak led you to healing. What the enemy meant for evil, God turned for good. Don't waste your pain by holding on to bitterness. Don't let anger or regret keep you from seeing what God is doing through it. Release it and let God redeem it. Every time you choose forgiveness instead of resentment, trust instead of fear, praise instead of complaint, you're turning pain into power. You might not see it yet, But your pain is producing something beautiful. The tears you cried are watering the soil for your next blessing. The struggle you endured is strengthening your spirit for what's coming. God is not done. He's preparing to use your story to lift someone else who's still in the storm. Your survival will be someone else's hope. So don't curse the pain. Thank God for it. Thank Him that He's using it to birth something new inside you. Thank Him that He's turning every wound into wisdom, every setback into strength, every trial into testimony. You may not see it now, but one day you'll stand in the very place where you once fell and say, it was worth it. God didn't waste a single moment. Hold on, because the pain is not the end, it's the beginning of something greater. You're being refined, not ruined. You're being prepared, not punished. God never wastes pain. He transforms it into purpose, and that purpose will lead you straight into the promise He's been preparing for you all along. There are moments in life when you can almost feel it deep within your spirit. Something is shifting. The weight you've been carrying starts to lift. The confusion begins to clear. The tears that once felt endless begin to slow. That's not coincidence. That's heaven whispering. It's time. Heaven is announcing a new beginning. You may not see all the details yet, but God has already declared that your old season is over and a new chapter is about to unfold. For too long, you've been walking through the ashes of what was the heartbreak, the disappointment, the loss, the waiting that felt unbearable. You've prayed, you've wept, you've wondered if things would ever change. But what you didn't know was that heaven was working behind the scenes, orchestrating a shift in your favor. God has been quietly arranging divine connections, moving pieces you couldn't see, and setting the stage for your breakthrough. When heaven announces a new beginning, everything starts to move. What was once closed begins to open. What felt heavy starts to feel lighter. What was taken will be restored. You don't have to force it or figure it all out. All you need to do is stay in faith, because when God says it's time, no devil, no delay, and no disappointment can stop what He's about to do. There's something powerful about how God works. He often allows the night to linger longer than we'd like because He's preparing something greater than we imagined. Sometimes it looks like everything is falling apart, but in reality, everything is falling into place. The end you feared is often the beginning God designed. You may think it's over, but God is just turning the page. In Isaiah 43, God says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" Notice that now. Not next month, not someday, but now. It's already in motion. You may not see it, but it's happening. The job that fell through, the friendship that ended, the door that closed, they weren't signs of rejection. They were signs of redirection. God had to remove some things to make room for what's next. Sometimes God has to allow endings to create space for beginnings. He can't fill your hands if they're still clinging to what He asked you to let go of. You've been mourning what left, but God is trying to make you ready for what's coming. Heaven is saying, stop rehearsing the pain and start preparing for the promise. What you lost was not the end of your story. It was the preparation for your promotion. Think about the caterpillar. It spends its early life crawling on the ground, limited, hidden, often overlooked. Then one day, it enters a dark, confining cocoon. To the outside world, it looks like the end. But inside that darkness, transformation is taking place. The very moment it looks like death is when new life is forming. When it emerges, it doesn't crawl anymore, it flies. The cocoon was never the end, it was the beginning. Maybe that's where you are right now. You've been in a dark season, isolated, confused, unsure of what's next. It's felt like everything has been closing in. But what looks like confinement is really transformation. God has been preparing you in private for what He's about to release in public. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was preparation for your new beginning. When heaven announces a new beginning, the shift isn't always loud. It might come quietly. You may wake up one day with peace where there used to be pain. You may feel hope rising where fear used to live. You may not even notice the change at first, but it's happening deep within your spirit. God is breathing new life into your situation, new strength into your heart, new direction into your path. There's a reason why storms don't last forever. Rain has a purpose. It cleanses, it nourishes, it prepares the ground for growth. After the rain comes the bloom. You've been through a storm, yes, but the rain was only watering your next season. The soil of your life has been softened through struggle, and now the seeds you planted in tears are about to sprout in joy. Don't be afraid to move forward. Don't keep revisiting old pain. The season that once served you no longer fits where God is taking you. When heaven declares new, it means different. It means letting go of what's familiar to embrace what's divine. It means trusting God even when the next step looks uncertain. It means believing that your best days aren't behind you. They're still ahead. Every great move of God begins with a moment of surrender. Abraham left his home without knowing where he was going. Moses walked into Pharaoh's court with only a staff in his hand. Ruth left everything familiar to follow faith into an unknown future. What do all these have in common? God called, they obeyed, and heaven opened a new chapter. When heaven announces a new beginning, it's not about what you have, it's about who goes with you. And when God goes before you, no obstacle can stand against you. You may have felt like the last season broke you, but it actually built you. You learned how to stand when you wanted to fall. You learned to pray when you didn't have words. You learned that God is faithful even when nothing makes sense. Those lessons are your foundation for this new beginning. What's ahead will require the strength you gain from what's behind. Heaven is declaring over you the wait is over. The warfare is lifting. The doors are opening. What was delayed is being delivered. The time of mourning is giving way to dancing. The night of tears is making room for the morning of joy. God is saying, I'm doing something new, something fresh, something greater than you've ever seen before. So lift your head, straighten your shoulders, and get ready. The past doesn't define you anymore. The pain doesn't control you anymore. The mistakes don't disqualify you anymore. Heaven has spoken, and when heaven speaks, everything must align. Chains have to break. Fear has to flee. New opportunities have to appear. You've survived enough storms to know that God always finishes what He starts. And right now, He's starting something new. The promise that's been delayed is about to be delivered. The dream that looked dead is about to come alive. The prayers you whispered in the dark are about to echo in the light. Heaven is announcing a new beginning, and this time, it's your turn. What once was will no longer hold you. What's ahead will no longer wait for you. Step into it boldly, because the same God who carried you through the old season is the one declaring this new one. And when God says it's time to begin again, no power on earth can hold you back. There are seasons in life when the heat feels unbearable. You find yourself in the middle of battles you didn't expect, facing pressures that seem too heavy to carry. You look around and wonder how you got here, why life suddenly feels like a furnace. You pray for relief, but the flames seem to grow hotter. In those moments, it's easy to think God has abandoned you, but He hasn't. He's right there in the fire with you. And the truth is this: you're not going to come out burned, you're going to come out refined. The fire isn't there to destroy you, it's there to develop you. What feels like it's breaking you is actually making you. The very heat that seems so intense is the process that's purifying your heart, strengthening your faith, and preparing you for what's next. God allows fire not to consume His children, but to cleanse them. The same fire that melts wax hardens clay. The same trial that destroys one person refines another. It's not the fire that decides your outcome, it's your faith in the midst of it. The Bible tells the story of 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were thrown into a fiery furnace because they refused to bow to a false god. The flames were so hot that they killed the soldiers who threw them in. But when the king looked into the fire, he saw not 3 men, but 4. God Himself was walking with them. They didn't burn, they didn't panic, and when they came out, not even the smell of smoke was on them. That's what happens when you belong to God. You may go through the fire, but you'll come out untouched. You may be walking through your own fire right now. Maybe it's the fire of heartbreak, the fire of loss, the fire of betrayal, or the fire of uncertainty. You felt the heat, the pressure, the pain that seems unending. But take heart, you're not alone in that furnace. God is walking through it with you. He's the 4th presence in your fire. You may not see Him, but He's holding you together, protecting you from what could have consumed you. When you come out of this, you'll realize the fire didn't destroy you. It revealed you. It burned away the fear, the doubt, the insecurity, and everything that wasn't meant to go with you into your next season. You're being purified. The parts of you that were built on weakness are being strengthened by faith. The person who went into this storm will not be the same person who comes out. You'll walk out wiser, stronger, and more confident in God's power. Fire has a way of revealing what's real. Gold is tested in flames to prove its purity. Likewise, your trials expose the strength of your faith. It's easy to trust God when everything is going right, but true faith is forged in the furnace of adversity. You learn who you really are when you have nothing left to hold on to but His Word. You discover His faithfulness not in comfort, but in the chaos. You may think this season is punishment, but it's actually preparation. God is using the fire to remove the things that have been holding you back. Maybe He's burning away unhealthy attachments, old mindsets, or hidden fears. Maybe He's teaching you to depend on Him in a way you never have before. Don't resist the process, embrace it. Because once the fire finishes its work, you'll step out carrying a new anointing, a deeper faith, and a clearer sense of purpose. Every person God used greatly had to go through the fire. Moses was refined in the wilderness before he led the Israelites to freedom. David was refined through years of rejection before he sat on the throne. Joseph was refined in the pit and the prison before he ruled in the palace. The fire was not their ending, it was their preparation for destiny. The same is true for you. God wouldn't have allowed the heat unless He intended to use it for your good. Sometimes the fire doesn't change your circumstances, it changes you. You might still be in the same place, facing the same challenges, but something inside you is different. You're calmer, more focused, more grounded. That's the work of refinement. The situation didn't get easier, but you got stronger. The mountain didn't move, but your faith grew big enough to climb it. That's what happens when you let God shape you in the flames. When you finally step out of this season, you won't look like what you've been through. People will see the glow of grace on you and wonder how you survived. You'll smile and say, "It was God," because the truth is, you didn't just survive the fire, you were transformed by it. You'll carry lessons that can't be taught in comfort, only learned in pain. You'll have a testimony that carries power because you've walked through something that should have destroyed you, and yet here you are, still standing, still believing, still praising. The enemy thought the fire would silence you, but it only made your faith louder. He thought the trial would break you, but it actually built you. He thought you'd quit, but you came out with even more determination. That's the beauty of God's process. He takes what was meant for evil and uses it for good. What tried to harm you has actually helped you. The fire that was designed to consume you has only confirmed that you are chosen, protected, and destined. So if you're in the fire today, don't fear. This is not your destruction, it's your transformation. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. Every minute you endure, every tear you cry, every prayer you whisper through the flames is shaping something powerful within you. God is refining you because He's about to release you. The pressure you feel is the evidence that promotion is near. And when you come out of this, you'll come out carrying peace that can't be shaken, joy that can't be stolen, and strength that can't be broken. You'll come out without the smell of smoke, without the scars of bitterness, without the weight of fear. You'll walk out free, healed, and full of faith. So don't curse the fire. Thank God for it. Because while it's hot now, it won't last forever. Every flame has a purpose, every trial has a limit, and every storm eventually passes. And when it does, you'll step out shining, refined by the fire, not burned by it, walking into your next season stronger than you've ever been, and ready for the blessing that's been waiting on the other side. Faith doesn't deny pain, it declares purpose. You see, faith is not pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's not putting on a fake smile when your heart is breaking. Faith is looking at the storm and saying, "I know my God is still in control." It's standing in the middle of the fire and saying, "Even here, I will trust Him." Faith doesn't ignore reality, it interprets it through the lens of divine purpose. It doesn't deny the mountain, it declares that with God, the mountain will move. Faith isn't the absence of pain, it's the confidence that pain has a purpose, and that purpose will birth something greater than what you've lost. Many times, we think faith means we'll never feel hurt, never cry, never go through hard seasons. But even Jesus wept. He felt the weight of rejection, betrayal, and agony. Yet He never lost sight of the Father's purpose. That's what faith does. It doesn't stop you from feeling, it helps you keep walking even while you're bleeding. It says, this hurts, but I'm not quitting. Faith whispers in your darkest nights, hold on. God is still writing the story. The tears you cry in secret are not wasted. Heaven records every one of them, and God will use them as the water to grow something beautiful in your future. When you walk through pain, it's easy to let bitterness take root. It's easy to question God, asking, why me? But faith changes the question. It asks, what is God doing through this? Faith doesn't deny that it hurts. It just believes there's holy meaning in the hurt. The pain may not make sense now, but faith trusts that one day it will. Sometimes God doesn't remove the thorn because that thorn is keeping you dependent on Him. Sometimes He doesn't take away the fire because the fire is refining what couldn't be refined any other way. Faith believes that the same God who allowed the pain will use that pain to promote you. Think of Joseph. He didn't deny the pain of betrayal. His own brothers sold him into slavery. He was falsely accused, thrown into prison, and forgotten. But through it all, Joseph never lost his faith. He didn't deny his suffering, but he declared God's purpose over it. When he finally stood in a palace, second only to Pharaoh, he looked back and said, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That's what faith does. It takes what was meant to destroy you and turns it into your destiny. Joseph's pain was real, but so was his purpose. And in the end, the purpose prevailed. When you go through something painful, your natural instinct is to want out. God, take this away. But faith sometimes says, God, if you're not going to take it away, then strengthen me to grow through it. You see, there are seasons where your faith won't change the situation, but it will change you. It will develop endurance, patience, compassion, and wisdom. It's in the painful places that you learn how to trust God more deeply. You learn that even when you don't understand, you can still depend on His character. Faith teaches you to say, I may not know what's ahead, but I know who's leading me. Some of the greatest miracles come from the most painful seasons. The cross looked like defeat, but it was actually the greatest victory in history. Faith looked beyond the nails, beyond the crown of thorns, and saw resurrection on the other side. Maybe right now you're in your Friday moment. Everything feels lost, broken, and silent. But remember, Sunday is coming. Faith declares that resurrection is already scheduled, even when the tomb is still sealed. The pain you're feeling is not the end. It's a transition to something greater. When you carry faith through your pain, you begin to walk differently. You don't crumble when things fall apart. You rise knowing that God is working behind the scenes. Faith helps you hold your peace when others expect you to fall apart. It keeps you standing when logic says you should have collapsed. It's not because you're strong, it's because you know who holds you. Faith gives you perspective. This is not happening to me, it's happening for me. Every setback, every tear, every heartbreak, it's all being woven into a divine plan that will one day make perfect sense. Faith doesn't tell you to suppress your emotions or act like you're fine. It tells you to bring those emotions to God, to weep in His presence, to be honest about your hurt, and yet still believe that He's good. Faith doesn't deny the valley. It declares that even in the valley, God is still faithful. It says, I may be walking through the shadow of death, but I will fear no evil, for you are with me. The shadow only exists because there's light nearby. Faith knows that light is still shining, even when clouds try to hide it. So don't let your pain convince you that God has forgotten you. He hasn't. The very place that hurt you the most is the same place where He'll reveal His glory the greatest. Faith declares that your suffering is not wasted. It's being redeemed. It says, this trial is temporary, but God's purpose is eternal. Hold on to that. Keep your heart soft, your spirit expectant, and your eyes fixed on what God promised. Faith doesn't deny pain, it declares purpose. You may be walking through fire right now, but you will come out refined, stronger and more radiant than ever. One day you'll look back and say, now I understand, God was using that pain to position me, to prepare me, to promote me. Until then, walk by faith, not by sight, because what you see may look painful, but what God is doing is powerful. Your tears are not in vain, your faith is not wasted, and your purpose, yes, your divine purpose, is unfolding right now, even in the middle of your pain. There are battles you fight that nobody knows about. Silent struggles that don't make it into your conversations. Nights when you cry but wipe your tears before anyone sees. Mornings when you get up, put on a smile, and keep going even though your heart feels heavy. Those are hidden battles, spiritual, emotional, internal fights that only you and God truly understand. But here's the good news. God never overlooks what happens in private. The same God who sees your silent tears is preparing a public breakthrough that will make it all make sense. He's turning your hidden battles into visible blessings. What's been fought in the dark will soon be celebrated in the light. You may feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, like your faith is unnoticed, your endurance unappreciated. But heaven has been watching every moment you chose to trust when quitting would have been easier. Every time you kept believing when there was no sign of progress, God took note. Every time you forgave someone who didn't apologize, every time you showed kindness when you were misunderstood, every time you worshiped through pain, heaven recorded it. You see, what you do in private determines what God will release in public. Your secret faithfulness is building your visible breakthrough. In Scripture, David understood hidden battles. Before he ever held a crown, he held a sling. Before the world saw him as a warrior, he was fighting lions and bears in secret fields, far from applause or attention. Nobody knew those battles, but God did, and when Goliath stood before him, God brought David's private victories into public view. The skills, courage, and faith he developed in isolation became the very tools that brought him to the spotlight. That's what God is doing for you right now. When the hidden battles you've been fighting are training ground for your public breakthrough. What you've been fighting in silence will soon be the story of your strength. Sometimes we think because no one notices it doesn't matter. We say, I'm trying my best, but nothing's changing. But God specializes in working in silence. Seeds grow underground long before they break through the soil. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean growth isn't happening. Your obedience, your patience, your quiet perseverance, they're all seeds. When the time is right, those seeds will break forth into visible fruit. Don't give up before the harvest. The very season that feels hidden is often the one where God is doing His most important work. You might be in a season where everything looks ordinary. You're praying, trusting, waiting, and wondering if it's all worth it. But behind the scenes, heaven is arranging divine connections, opportunities, and favor that will bring you into a new season of visibility. When God decides it's your time, no one can stop it. The same people who overlooked you will have to recognize what God is doing through you. The same circumstances that once defeated you will now serve as evidence of His power. That's what a public breakthrough looks like. It's when God reveals to the world what He's been building in you all along. Think about Esther. Before she became queen, she was hidden in preparation. She didn't know why she was there, why God had placed her in a palace surrounded by uncertainty. But when the time came, her hidden obedience became the key to saving her people. God turned her private preparation into public purpose. The same God who positioned Esther is positioning you. Your hidden season isn't wasted, it's sacred. It's the place where God is shaping your character, refining your vision, and preparing your heart for what's ahead. Maybe you've been fighting silent battles with your health, your mind, or your relationships. You've been praying, God, when will things change? And it feels like He's quiet. But sometimes God's silence isn't absence, it's strategy. He's working beneath the surface, building something that requires time. He's aligning the right people, the right moments, and the right timing. When the breakthrough comes, it won't just be a small change, it'll be a divine reveal. God will make it clear that He was with you in every step of the struggle. There's a reason God allows certain battles to remain hidden. If everyone knew what you were fighting, they might have opinions, distractions, or discouragements that would slow your progress. God keeps some battles private because they're meant to be fought in intimacy with Him. He's teaching you to depend on His voice, not human validation. When the victory comes, no one will be able to take credit for it. They'll know it was the hand of God. The very thing you fought in silence will become the testimony that speaks louder than words. Public breakthroughs are not about fame or attention. They're about glory, God's glory revealed through your story. When He blesses you, restores you, promotes you, it won't just be for your sake. It'll be so others can look at your life and say, only God could have done that. Your hidden battles are the foundation for a miracle that will inspire others to believe again. You didn't suffer for nothing. You didn't endure those sleepless nights in vain. God is going to take everything the enemy tried to use against you and turn it into the very platform that lifts you higher. So don't despise your hidden battles. Don't be discouraged because nobody sees what you're going through. The same God who saw David in the field, Esther in the palace, and Joseph in the prison sees you right now. He knows the weight you carry and the tears you've cried. And He's saying, hold on, I'm turning it around. The battle that felt endless is about to birth your breakthrough. What was once private pain will soon become public praise. Your hidden battles are not signs of weakness, they're evidence of preparation. You've been faithful, you've endured, and God has taken notice. The breakthrough that's coming will be undeniable, unstoppable, and unforgettable. Doors will open that you didn't knock on. Opportunities will find you that you didn't chase. The favor that's coming will make sense of the pain that didn't. Because when God turns your hidden battles into public breakthroughs, it's never small, it's always supernatural. Get ready, because what's been concealed in the shadows is about to shine in the light. Heaven is about to make your private victory public. There comes a moment in every believer's life when God shifts the direction of their story. A moment when everything that felt stuck suddenly begins to move. A moment when the pain, the waiting, and the uncertainty give birth to something new. That's what a divine turning point is. It's when heaven steps in and changes the course of your life. You may not have seen it coming, but God did. He's been preparing you for it, shaping your heart, and setting the stage for something extraordinary. What looked like the end was never the end. It was the setup for a turnaround that only God could orchestrate. A divine turning point doesn't always start with celebration. Sometimes it begins with loss, disappointment, or confusion. You think something is fallen apart, but in reality, it's falling into place. God often hides breakthroughs in what feels like breakdowns. When He's getting ready to move you forward, He'll first remove what can't go with you. People may walk away, doors may close, and plans may crumble, but don't be discouraged. When something leaves your life, it's often a sign that God is clearing space for something greater. The discomfort you feel right now is not a punishment, it's preparation. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea, it looked impossible. The sea was in front of them, the enemy was behind them, and fear surrounded them. But that impossible moment was actually their divine turning point. When Moses stretched out his staff, the waters parted, and what had been a barrier became a pathway. That's how God works. He takes obstacles and turns them into openings. The very thing that was meant to stop you will become the thing that launches you. Don't judge your story by how it looks right now. God is about to turn what seems impossible into undeniable evidence of His power. There's a shift happening in the unseen. You may not feel it yet, but something is breaking in your favor. The same God who split seas, raised the dead, and opened barren wombs is working behind the scenes of your life. He's aligning opportunities, softening hearts, and moving mountains that you can't even see. Sometimes your situation won't change immediately, but your spirit will sense it. You'll feel a quiet assurance that things are about to turn. That's the Holy Spirit whispering, this is your divine turning point. What was delayed will no longer be denied. And maybe you've been in a long season of waiting for healing, for clarity, for a breakthrough, for restoration. You've prayed, believed, and wondered if God heard you. But God hasn't forgotten. Delays don't mean denial, they mean divine timing. When God decides it's time, no power on earth can stop it. When He opens a door, no one can shut it. When He declares a turning point, it doesn't matter who's against you. He will bring you out of the shadows and into His promise. The same God who turned Joseph's prison into a palace, Ruth's sorrow into a story of redemption, and Job's ashes into double restoration is the same God turning things for you right now. Sometimes, your turning point comes disguised as a small act of obedience. Maybe God has been asking you to forgive someone, to take a step of faith, or to let go of something that's been holding you back. Obedience is often the bridge between your wilderness and your breakthrough. When you do what God is asking, even if it doesn't make sense, you activate His power in your life. Peter experienced this when Jesus told him to cast his net again after a night of catching nothing. Peter obeyed, and suddenly his nets were overflowing. The turning point wasn't in the water, it was in his obedience. This season you're in may have been full of trials and tears, but it's not wasted. Every setback has been shaping your strength. Every delay has been developing your faith. Every unanswered prayer has been stretching your trust. God doesn't allow pain without purpose. He's been refining you, pruning you, and preparing you for a greater assignment. What you learned in the valley will carry you to the mountaintop. When the turning point comes, you'll realize that God was working all along, protecting you from what you didn't see, guiding you through what you didn't understand. There's a reason the enemy has fought you so hard. He knows that your turning point is near. He knows that once you step into what God has for you, everything changes. That's why the pressure has been so heavy, why the attacks have been so personal, and why the waiting has been so long. But remember this, the fiercest battles often come before the greatest breakthroughs. The night is darkest before the dawn. So don't quit now. Keep believing, keep standing, keep praising. The same God who brought you through every past battle will carry you through this one too. You're about to see divine reversals. Situations that once looked hopeless will suddenly turn in your favor. Relationships will be restored. Finances will be replenished. Peace will return to your heart. Doors that have been locked will swing open. You'll look back and say, only God could have done this, because when He brings a turning point, it's not just a minor adjustment, it's a complete transformation. He doesn't just fix things, He makes them brand new. What was meant for evil, He turns for good. What was a setback becomes a setup. This is your divine turning point. The season of being overlooked is ending. The season of striving is closing. God is about to shift you into a season of favor, visibility, and fulfillment. You've been faithful in the waiting, and now heaven is releasing the reward. Get ready for divine surprises, for unexpected blessings, for answered prayers that exceed what you imagine. This isn't just another chapter, it's a whole new beginning. When God turns things, He does it suddenly. One moment, Joseph was in prison, the next, he was in the palace. One moment, Ruth was gleaning in a field, the next, she was walking into destiny. One moment, the disciples were afraid in the storm, the next, they saw the winds obey Jesus. That's how fast God can shift your story. So lift your head, open your heart, and believe again. What felt like an ending is actually the beginning of something divine. This is not your breakdown, it's your breakthrough. This is your divine turning point, and heaven is declaring, your story is about to change for good. There are moments in life when you look around and wonder, God, when is it going to happen for me? You've prayed, you've believed, you've stayed faithful, yet nothing seems to move. It's in those moments that we learn one of the deepest truths about God's timing. His promises don't come when you're ready, they come when you're needed. You see, if God gave you everything you wanted when you thought you were ready, it would only satisfy your comfort. But when He gives it to you when you need it, it strengthens your faith, deepens your dependence, and transforms your destiny. God's promise always shows up right on time. His time, not yours. Sometimes we confuse readiness with timing. You might feel prepared, organized, spiritually mature, and emotionally stable, thinking, surely now is the time. But God doesn't measure readiness the way we do. He looks at what's happening not only inside of you, but also around you. He sees what's ahead, what's being aligned, what needs to fall into place. He knows when the right people will be positioned, when the right opportunity will open, when your heart will be able to carry the weight of what He's promised. That's why it seems delayed. It's not denial, it's divine synchronization. Heaven's clock doesn't tick by your calendar, it ticks by purpose. Think about Abraham. God promised him a son, but decades passed before that promise came to life. Abraham was ready long before Isaac arrived, at least he thought he was. But God wasn't just developing Abraham's circumstances, He was developing Abraham's character. The waiting wasn't wasted, it built endurance, faith, and trust. When Isaac finally came, Abraham understood the value of God's timing. Had the promise come earlier, Abraham might have taken the glory for it. But because it came when it was needed, only God could receive the credit. That's how God works. He waits until your resources run dry, your strength runs out, your options are gone. So when the promise arrives, everyone knows it was Him. You might feel frustrated right now because you've been sowing, serving, and standing firm, but you're still waiting for the manifestation. You've done your part, and it feels like heaven is silent. But silence doesn't mean absence. God is never late. His promises aren't forgotten. They're being perfected. There's a divine purpose in the pause. If the promise came too soon, it might destroy you instead of bless you. Sometimes, God withholds what you want until you become the person who can handle what you've asked for. What looks like a delay is actually mercy in disguise. When Joseph was a young man, God gave him a dream of greatness. But instead of stepping into the palace, he found himself in a pit, then a prison. For years, it looked like the promise had died. But when Pharaoh had a dream and needed someone to interpret it, suddenly Joseph's name was called. It wasn't random, it was timed. The same God who gave Joseph the dream also timed his release perfectly. If Joseph had been freed any earlier, he would have been forgotten. But God's promise came when Joseph was needed, and in one day he went from prisoner to prime minister. That's what divine timing looks like. It doesn't just fulfill your desire, it fulfills your destiny. We live in a world that worships speed, instant answers, instant results, instant success. But God is not a God of instant gratification. He's a God of perfect preparation. He doesn't rush development. He's not trying to get you to the promise fast. He's trying to get you there ready. But understand this, readiness is not comfort. You can feel unprepared and still be positioned perfectly. God often moves when you feel least ready because that's when your faith is most alive. When you can't rely on your own strength, that's when His strength is revealed. When you feel weak, uncertain, and out of options, that's when His promise shows up to remind you that it's not about your readiness, it's about His faithfulness. Sometimes, God will let you sit in a season of waiting so that when the promise arrives, you value it differently. The pain of waiting deepens your gratitude for what's coming. The tears you shed in private will make the joy of fulfillment that much sweeter. God's promises are never rushed, they're refined. Every season of delay is God's way of ensuring that when the blessing comes, it lasts. A rushed promise can crumble under pressure, but a matured promise will withstand any storm. So don't despise the waiting. It's the womb of your miracle. There's a moment in every believer's life when the waiting ends. You won't get a calendar alert or a warning. It will happen suddenly. You'll look up and realize the door that was closed has opened. The thing you prayed for has arrived, and the struggle that once defined you has ended. That's the beauty of God's timing. It feels slow until it suddenly shifts. One moment of divine favor can make up for years of delay. God can do in an instant what you've been trying to make happen for a lifetime. The question isn't, when will it happen? The question is, will you trust Him while it's happening? Mary and Martha thought Jesus was late when their brother Lazarus died. They said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died." They believed in His power but doubted His timing. What they didn't realize was that Jesus wasn't late. He was on schedule for a miracle that would reveal His glory. He didn't come when they thought He should. He came when they needed Him most. He showed up in the moment when human help had failed so divine power could be revealed. Sometimes God waits until it looks impossible, not to hurt you but to show you His resurrection power. So if you're in a season of waiting, take heart. The promise still stands. God hasn't forgotten what He told you. The same voice that spoke it is the same hand that will bring it to pass. It may not come when you're ready, but it will come when you need it. When that promise arrives, it will fit perfectly. It will heal what was broken, restore what was lost, and answer questions you didn't even know how to ask. You'll realize that God's delay was not neglect, it was design. When the promise finally manifests, you won't just thank God for what He gave you, you'll thank Him for when He gave it. You'll say, "If it had come earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. If it had come later, I might have missed it. But it came right when I needed it." That's the kind of God you serve. A God who is never too early, never too late, but always right on time. So keep believing, keep trusting, and keep waiting with expectation. Because when God's promise shows up, it won't just meet your need, it will exceed your imagination. There comes a time in your life when waiting turns into walking, when promises turn into fulfillment, and when prayers that felt unanswered suddenly start unfolding before your eyes. That's what a now season is. It's when God says, this is the moment, not next month, not next year, not someday in the future, but now. It's the season when delay gives way to destiny, when what was held up in the spiritual realm is finally released into your reality. You've been through the wilderness, you've endured the pruning, you've waited through long nights of faith, but now, heaven is declaring that it's time to move. You're stepping into your now season. A now season doesn't arrive because of your effort, it arrives because of divine timing. It's not something you make happen, it's something God releases. For years, you may have been doing the right thing with little visible reward. You prayed, believed, worked hard, and wondered if your time would ever come. But every seed you sowed, every tear you cried, every act of faith you performed was stored in heaven's timeline. And now the appointed time has come. The same God who watched you in the waiting is the God who is saying today, this is your moment. Step into what I've prepared. When Jesus performed his first miracle, his mother asked him to turn water into wine. At first, Jesus said, my time has not yet come. But moments later, something shifted. What wasn't possible a moment ago became possible in an instant. The same thing happens when you enter your now season. Things that seemed impossible for years suddenly begin to happen with ease. What once required struggle begins to flow. Favor starts finding you, doors begin opening, and opportunities that were once closed begin to swing wide. When heaven declares now, everything changes. The truth is, you've already been prepared for this. God has been training you in private for the platform He's about to reveal in public. Those hidden seasons weren't wasted. They were necessary. Every setback taught you something about resilience. Every heartbreak deepened your compassion. Every disappointment refined your faith. You thought you were waiting for your blessing, but your blessing was waiting for you to be ready. And now that readiness has matured. God is saying, you've passed the test, you've learned the lesson, and now it's time to step into the promise. A now season is not always about visible success, it's about divine acceleration. What took others years to accomplish, God can do for you in months, even weeks. That's what happens when His hand of favor is on your life. He redeems the time. He makes up for lost opportunities. He brings restoration in ways that exceed your imagination. You may have spent years in delay, but God can compress a decade of progress into a single season. Don't be surprised when doors open quickly, when people show up to help you, when blessings start overtaking you. That's what a now season looks like. Heavenly momentum that you couldn't create on your own. Think about Joseph. For years he was hidden away, forgotten, and misunderstood. It seemed like nothing was moving in his life. But one day, just one ordinary day, everything shifted. Pharaoh called his name, and within 24 hours, Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister. That's what divine timing does. It turns obscurity into influence in a moment. You may feel overlooked right now, but when your now season comes, you won't need to chase anyone or prove yourself. The same people who ignored you will suddenly see the hand of God on your life. Your obedience in private is about to be rewarded in public. You've probably gone through seasons that tested your patience. Seasons where you had to trust God even when you saw no evidence. But those were the seasons that built the foundation for this one. Without the waiting, you wouldn't appreciate the release. Without the pain, you wouldn't recognize the promise. God had to mature your spirit, strengthen your faith, and clear out what didn't belong before He could bring you here. You're not entering your now season by accident. You're entering it by design. This moment has been written into your story since the beginning of time. When God declares a now season, it's not just for your benefit, it's for His glory. He's about to do something in your life that will cause others to say, only God could have done that. You've been quiet for a long time, enduring things people never saw, but your testimony is about to speak louder than your trials. God is not just bringing breakthrough, He's bringing evidence. Proof of His power, proof of His favor, proof that He never forgot about you. You're about to step into a season where what you've been believing for becomes visible, tangible, undeniable. But hear this, you must walk boldly into your now season. This is not the time to shrink back or doubt whether you're worthy. God wouldn't be releasing this moment if you weren't prepared to handle it. Fear may whisper, what if you fail? But faith will shout, what if you soar? You've been through too much to settle for small expectations. Lift your vision. Dream again. expect the miraculous. Because what God is doing now will not just meet your needs, it will exceed your imagination. This now season will also bring divine connections. People you never thought you'd meet will suddenly cross your path. Relationships that align with your destiny will form effortlessly. Doors of influence will open that no amount of networking could have achieved. That's how God works. He positions you where you need to be at the exact moment you need to be there. Every delay, every detour was leading you here. So get ready. You're not stepping into the same kind of season you've known before. This is not a repeat, it's a revelation. You're moving from survival to significance, from waiting to walking, from believing to receiving. God's timing has collided with your preparation, and now it's manifesting in your life. The prayers you prayed years ago are about to bear fruit. The dreams you thought had died are about to come alive again. This is your now season. Your time to rise, your time to shine, your time to walk in the fullness of what God promised. Don't let fear or doubt rob you of it. Step forward with confidence, knowing that heaven is backing you. You've waited long enough. The season of delay is over. The time of divine fulfillment is here. God is saying, this is the moment you've been praying for. You're not waiting anymore. You're walking into your now season.